All right, so we should be at about episode 8 of the Black Valley podcast.
Yes,
And
sir.
want to welcome you, Brother Long. Um, Welcome back again. And today we just want to focus on the analysis piece, starting with analysis of OKRs, right? And OKRs stands for Objective and Key Results. And the idea behind OKRs is that we want to specify here's what result you want to achieve in a year, and then that's the objective of the OKR, and then here's the desired future state, the piece of it that you can complete each quarter, and those are the key results. And what should happen is that as I go about achieving each key result quarter by quarter, I should get closer to obtaining the objective for the whole year until finally I get that fourth quarter, and the completion of that fourth quarter objective. I mean, fourth quarter KR, key result, should actually achieve the objective. But then I can track it and make sure that I'm on track to complete everything. Think of the key results as milestones that are measurable. I should be able to see that I'm on pace to each quarter complete a piece of the objective until the whole thing is done, right? So was actually developed at Intel Corporation, and it was introduced to Google when it was founded, and some of the other startups in Silicon Valley. And so it's been a mainstay from Silicon Valley in order to align the whole workforce. So everyone knows here's your OKRs, here's the objectives. And when I had those objectives, not only did those objectives get broken down, decomposed into the KRs, the key results per quarter, but they also are cascaded down. And when I say cascaded, I break them down so that if I'm at the top of the company, here are the organizational OKRs, but then your department, your group, here's the part that you're going to contribute. So you think about decomposing it. What piece can I do to contribute to the whole? And you have your objectives mapped out there. And if I do that all the way down the line, from the top of the hierarchy all the way down to the bottom, then the whole organization gets aligned to the exact same strategy, the exact same goals, because they're all coming from that organizational goal. And then we're all moving in the same direction. So we become aligned, we become more effective. The reason I'm bringing this up and we're discussing OKRs is because the biggest weakness is that people don't shape their OKRs correctly. And if you don't shape them correctly, you don't decompose them the right way, then what happens is that people at the lower rung of the organization are trying to accomplish some things that they care about, but the things that they're trying to accomplish actually won't accomplish the organizational objective. So then we're not aligned. I'm doing some things that veer off, that don't help the greater good. And that's a position that we do not want to be in. So again, what we'll do is we'll discuss a technique that we call decomposition. And decomposition is taking a big item and breaking it down into smaller pieces that are more manageable for the people to actually accomplish. There's the old maxim, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You take that big item and say, hey, what bite can we actually accomplish in a certain time frame? What do you think about OKR so far?
It continues to be a thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
That you wonder why you don't do this already. And it sounds like the business application of basic planning.
Absolutely. And that's what this is designed for. OKRs are designed to actually replace all other forms of strategic planning. so that we have, again, the single place to look for our strategy, this common vision to focus us on where we're going in a short time frame, right? A year or less. And so, hey, what we'll do is we'll go over some OKR basics that you already know, and then we'll get into the deep stuff, which is the analysis. And what I'll ask you to do as we go through, I'm going to ask you some questions to create the OKRs. And what might be good, earlier we talked about creating that Bridgeport, Rwanda. And so maybe we'll actually think about, that as the context for our OKRs. And that way we have something to shoot for. So you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So again, as we discuss, the objective of an OKR is a desired future state, right? And because it's a desired future state, when I discuss any state, a state is a characteristic or a condition. And we usually describe a state like the state of being hot, the state of being cold, right? We usually describe a state with adjectives. So when we form our OKRs and it's a desired future state, what we want to keep in mind is that they should be adjectives describing a noun. So I should see one or more adjectives followed by a noun. The number of adjectives should describe the characteristics that you should see in order to know that you've reached your vision, reached your goal. So if there are 5 different characteristics, then I have at least 5 different adjectives to describe each of the characteristics of whatever noun I'm discussing. So to give you an example, right now I'm doing this video from my kitchen. And so if I want to describe the future state of my kitchen, because it's my daughter's first day of school, she completely messed up the kitchen. Right, so it's all dirty now. So if I'm going to describe the future desired state of my kitchen, well, I want it clean, right? So the removal of all the food waste, the scraps from when she made her lunch, that's one characteristic. But there's another characteristic. Not only do I want it clean, but I want it organized. She was in a hurry on her first day, trying to think of all the things she needed. So she took out a lot of items. And I want those items to be put back into their appropriate location, right? So my kitchen is organized, right? The way it should be. So that's a second characteristic. A third characteristic, not only should it be clean, not only should it be organized, but it should be what I call orderly. Meaning that the items that we're going to use the most should be in the location where we're going to use it. So that way everything is orderly, it's convenient to actually use. So those are like 3 characteristics of how I want the kitchen, right? And so we want to think about the characteristics, the conditions that we should see to know that the goal has been reached. So let's go through an example, and I'm going to ask some questions to kind of tease out what the OKR should be. Again, if the objective, we usually start with that. If the objective is your desired future state, then the first question I'm going to ask to elicit the OKR from you, to elicit the objective, is what is your desired future state? Right? So if we're talking about, Bridgeport, Rwanda, right? What's the desired future state of Bridgeport, Rwanda? What are your thoughts?
And so we need adjectives.
Adjective describing the noun of Bridgeport, Rwanda.
Well, I'll just tell you, and then you can help me come up with the adjectives that will fit in that.
Mm-hmm.
So We want to be, for lack of a better word, booked. We want people to be using our services. We want to be in the capital. We want to be known, and we want to be well known in the business circles of the capital. And we want to be, I believe we want to be recruiting and training other people to be able to pass work on to lighten our load.
All right. So I'm going to put something in the chat and I'll read it out to you.
Okay.
So I have our desired future state as being booked / in demand, well known in the capital, professional services. I had that as a noun, with enough capacity for the demand. So that's our objective. How you feel about this?
I think that you're a wordsmith.
And so the next step is, again, this is what we want to actually have accomplished in a year, and that's the objective. Our next step with the OKR and decomposition, again, that's a technique we're working on right now. It's one of the three main analysis techniques. You have decomposition, horizontal analysis, and vertical analysis, but we'll focus on decomposition right now. In order to decompose it, what we do is we figure out the smaller time box, and for each key result, we usually make them a quarter for 3 months. And you ask the question, what piece of the objective can be accomplished in 3 months, in a quarter? So again, the objective we had, and again, I put it in the chat, booked, in demand, well-known in the capital, professional services firm with enough capacity to meet the demand. What piece of that can you honestly accomplish in 3 months?
I think the last one, having the capacity, because as soon as I learn it, it may take some time to get well known. It may take some time to get booked or in demand. But once I learn it, I can do a retreat and have folks come and stay somewhere and do like a weekend retreat and get everybody trained on as far as what I know. I can get other people to know what I know and be able to do what I can do very, very rapidly.
All right, so for our quarterly piece of it, we're gonna have advisory services firm with enough capacity to meet the anticipated demand. Right. So I put that in the chat. Right. Our KR. Again, we're gonna have an advisory services firm with enough capacity to meet the demand. And what we want to do with our KRs, we actually have to be specific. We want to make it measurable. In order to make it measurable, what we have to do is start to quantify. Well, we said we're going to have enough to meet the demand. How much is the demand? How much are we going to have for capacity? Like, what's that look like? How do you know when you get there? So again, to make things measurable, the key question we ask is, what can I see or observe to know that we have accomplished the key result. And that's how you make it measurable. So what are your thoughts?
That we have 4 people who are able to do the work.
So 4 people that are able to consult / advise on OKRs. Which that sounds, again, now one thing we do with our OKRs, and this gets to the analysis piece. There is a well-known principle when goal setting that we call SMART. You ever heard of SMART goals?
Yes.
Perfect. And so SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and some people actually say reasonable, and we'll discuss that later, and timely.
What was the last one?
Timely or time bound, right? Because you can have a goal, any goal can be accomplished with an infinite amount of time, but what makes it really tough is when you have some constraints on it. So it has to be finished by in a certain time box, right? So we gotta make it time bound. And so what we do is you take your OKRs. In this case, we'll just focus on the key result, and you're gonna make sure that the broken down, again, we took an objective, we broke it down into a smaller piece, which is just the key result. Here's what I can accomplish in a quarter. And we want to make sure that it passes the muster for each one of these characteristics, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant or reasonable, and then time bound. So we take our KR, right? And our KR was that we have these advisory services, but the advisory services firm has enough capacity to meet the demand. And we said that the capacity in question that we need to have are 4 people that can actually consult and advise on the OKRs. So our magic number is 4. So now what we do is we go through each of the pieces of SMART, right? And we say, all right, is this specific? Right? Is it unambiguous? What do you think? Is it specific enough?
Yes.
And so now we go to our next one. Next to the M in SMART is measurable. Can we measure whether or not we've attained our key result?
Yes.
Yeah, because we said 4 people, so we can actually count it, right? And see our progress. Is it attainable? Like, can it be done? Can we take some professionals out of Rwanda, give them the training that they need, the nuances that we actually employ at Bridgeport, so that they can use the practices and tailor it in the way that we do for our clients?
Absolutely.
All right, so the next one, the R, is relevant, and some people say reasonable. So let's go over relevant first. Relevant pertains to, by doing this, and here's where we go from decomposition to another technique that we call vertical analysis. Relevant says, if I do this piece, I do this KR, will it actually help me to achieve the overall objective? So just to remind you, the overall objective was to have booked, in demand, well known in the capital, professional services firm with enough capacity to meet the demand, right? And if we accomplish this KR, which is to have our advisory services firm with enough capacity to meet the anticipated demand, will it help us to meet the overall objective?
One third of it, yes.
Cool. All right, then. So in that case, it passes the relevant test. When you actually ask that question, will doing something at the lower level accomplish something at the higher level goal? We call that vertical analysis, right? Well, doing this accomplish that. And whenever you have that relationship where you do that vertical analysis, whenever you have that relationship, it's kind of a check and balance on your decomposition. So we started with decomposition. We say, here's the whole, and what piece of it can we do? Can we break off and do in a certain time box, right? That's how we decompose it. And the vertical analysis is the check. And it says, hey, by doing this, will we achieve the higher end goal? Vertical analysis. So whenever you do decomposition, you also want to do the vertical analysis to make sure that you did it correctly. And it's usually advised that an independent person, so somebody who didn't actually do it, they actually check the work to make sure that things really are relevant. Now, the second half of the R in SMART is reasonable. So attainable kind of asks the question, can it be done? Reasonable looks at, yeah, we can do it, but is it really feasible? We've got this time box that we're actually looking at, which for our KRs, the time box is a quarter, right? It's 3 months. So yeah, it can be done. It's attainable, but is it reasonable given our conditions, given the time box, given the demands and other things that you have to do? Is it feasible that we could actually accomplish this in our environment within the time box? And this is an important note, right? And the reason I say it's an important note is because people have lots of demands on them. Now, when you develop OKRs, the OKRs should be the most important things for your strategy that you're working on. So they should supersede everything besides your business as usual operations to maintain yourself. But again, you want to make sure that you can actually do it within the confines of your environment. All right, so what are your thoughts?
So I will have to ask you a question.
Uh-huh.
How many of these sessions we're doing now do you think it will take for you to explain this process to me?
I would estimate that it will take probably 15 of these sessions.
So then it depends on the start date for this. If we start this after we complete, then yes. But if we start this now, then no, because it's going to take me the quarter to learn.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned this because this is a part of that planning process, right? We set goals. And again, the goals that we set for OKRs, sometimes they refer to them as stretch goals. We want something that is reasonable, that is attainable to do within the time box. But we want to make sure that when we say stretch, that it's something that will challenge you, that it's not something that's easy, because nothing significant is done if it's easy, right? It's got to be something that's significant if it's going to be an objective that's going to unite your organization, get everyone aligned on the same page. And so, yeah, we want to think about the encumbrances and what it brings out, which you just noted, are what we call assumptions. When I have a stretch goal, something that is difficult for us to reach, automatically you start thinking about what your approach to accomplishing the goal is going to be. And there's certain things that you believe about your approach. The things that you believe about your approach are your assumptions, right? Here are the things that you think are going to be true in order to meet it. And so when doing this process, you want to surface what these assumptions are. And the key to obtaining alignment, most people don't call out what their beliefs, what their assumptions are. But if you do this properly, like we're doing right now, your beliefs will automatically come to the surface so we can discuss it. And what we want to do is not just discuss it, we want to capture it. So right now, we've captured a couple of assumptions. The first assumption one, is you asked me, like, how many sessions will it take? And I'm saying, hey, it's going to take 15 sessions, 15 of these sessions to train people. Now, in answering that, I actually had an assumption number 2. The assumption number 2 is that the people that we're going to work with, the 4 people, have experience with strategic planning already. It may not be OKRs, but if they have some experience with strategic planning, then I can actually teach them, hey, here's what you used to, whether you're using Pesto or what other method you're using, SWOT analysis, whatever method you were using, I can tell you how it converts and put it into OKR format and give you the tips for that. So I had a second assumption that they have some experience, right? There's a third assumption that you threw out. And the third assumption that you threw out is that when we start, we're going to start right after this session. Because you're like, hey, if it takes 15 sessions and we did 1 per week, hey, that'll actually bring us out to, at least 3 months. 3 times, there's 4 weeks in a month. 4 times 3 is 12, right? So we have to actually do at least once a week, and we have to start right now, right? And that leads us to a fourth assumption. And the fourth assumption is that we will have more than 1 session per week. For some of these weeks, just simple math, in order to fit it all in a quarter, you'd have to have more than 1 session per week. And additionally, there's a fifth assumption. The fifth assumption is that the 4 people will start learning within 1 or 2 weeks. So, you're learning it, and you may have anticipated your approach to be, hey, you learn it and then you teach them. But in order to meet this timeline, you're going to have to learn a piece of it and then teach them a piece. And then you learn another piece and teach them a piece, right? So just going through this actually clarifies the approach, and documenting your assumptions with your OKRs is actually going to be an extreme benefit to making sure that you have the alignment. Most people can agree to the huge higher level goal, but when they're misaligned, The problem usually is in the assumptions. They don't agree to those specific approach to how we're doing things. And that's where the trouble is. That's where the meat is. That's where you want to focus everyone's attention. How are you feeling about this?
I love it, man. I love it. You know, it's. I feel like I should have been involved in. I don't know if this is IT. I don't know what this is. IT. I don't know what it is. But I just know I was built for this, man. I was built for this.
And the thing I want to bring out again, most organizations don't capture their assumptions, right? And if you don't capture it, you don't write it down and make it explicit, then, you know, I'll have one idea. In our example here of training the 4 people, you know, you may have had the idea that you were going to learn everything up front and then teach everyone in one batch afterward. But, you know, with the timeline and the amount of work we have, you can quickly see that it's not going to be feasible. And I had this assumption that, hey, you know what? You're going to have to learn a piece of it and then teach a piece, and learn a piece and teach a piece. Unless we make that explicit and write it out and really talk about it, your approach is completely different from my approach. We underline, right? And I might not do the things necessary to get that alignment unless we just actually discuss it. This is the piece that most organizations miss. You know, the assumptions, capturing those so you can discuss the approach, and the analysis that needs to be done in order to make sure that this works is super important. You know, capturing out what must be true in order for us to reach the key result is very important, and it takes some time to do. And so it becomes incumbent upon the leadership team of an organization to just review these things, to sit down, think about it, and then write them out so we can make some reasonable assessments. What do you think about the process we're using, our first foray into OKRs and decomposition and vertical analysis? Is that the 2 analysis techniques we went over today?
Well, I'm very happy because I did, in my mind, I was going to go through all of it and then teach it. But then learning the time that it takes, I realized that was going to push it out much further than I had hoped. But the idea of getting a piece and learning a piece is like now, since we've done this, I know what to expect and I know what to do. And I have it, you know, solidified in my mind. I understand what needs to happen in order for this to be successful, because we've talked about it and so I understand. And although it's just the 2 of us, it's brought us into an alignment that is often missing from all of the other community work that I've done. We might have 10 people at the table and we're not in alignment, and we all have different assumptions, and it winds up becoming problematic because people's feelings get hurt because they create expectations. They create assumptions cause expectations, and unmet expectation cause disappointment. And disappointment is a powerful emotional thing that can stop people from being productive together.
Right.
And I see this as similar to when I work with children. There are certain techniques that we use that prevents certain issues from being able to arise. So for example, when you sit all the children in the circle, all of the dynamics that happen when the smart kids are in the front and the kids who are behind are in the back, all of those dynamics and the things that happen you erase the potential for a lot of problems just by sitting in a circle. Similarly, just by us going through and uncovering our assumptions and talking about them, we are preventing the possibility of a lot of things happening as a result of not doing this.
Right. Absolutely true. And again, that's why it's so essential. And again, this is the piece, but most organizations don't do, that leads to failure. Right. And you're right. Like if I assume, like, I have a view of the world. I have a paradigm. With every paradigm, the way I view the world comes with it a group of assumptions. And I think that the way I view the world is how the world really is. So I'm expecting you to view the world the same way. And when you do things that indicate they're not in conjunction with my assumptions, my worldview, because I'm already thinking that you have the same belief system, I recognize the disconnect. And that's where the emotions come out. Disappointment, because I think you should know better than to do that. Sometimes anger, if I assume that you have bad intentions, so you did this on purpose, right? So I'll get angry, right? Sometimes fear, like, hey, you know what? You should be competent enough to make the right choices, the right decisions. But the fact that you didn't, now I'm scared about what you're going to do in the future. I can't rely on you, right?
Wow.
Now, all these emotions come out. And now I'm acting upon these emotions and trying to get rid of them instead of just concentrating on the work. And this is how organizations start, they create dysfunction. And if you just take the time to delineate the assumptions out and then make sure we're on the same page, then all that can go away. Right? But you have to do this first. You have to go through this process. Right? Now, there's one more step in this process. Remember, I discussed there were 3 analysis techniques. We went through decomposition. We took the whole objective and broke it down into the 4 KRs, right? Smaller pieces. We did vertical analysis. So we challenged and said, if I do this piece, will it get me closer to the objective? Right? And I make sure we did our decomposition properly. But there's one more thing. Because it could be that by doing this KR, yeah, I'm getting closer, but it may not be enough. So we can't just do vertical analysis. We need to do another technique that we call horizontal analysis. And horizontal analysis says, do I have everything? Do I need to do something else in order to meet the objective? And I'm going to flush out all the things that I need to do to make sure that I actually meet the objective. Now, again, the objectives, the key results should be milestones to reach the objective. So we did one key result, for that first quarter. So in horizontal analysis, what you'll do is you'll ask yourself the question, is this enough? Right? If I do that key result, will it be enough to reach the overall objective? Or do I need to do something in addition to reach the objective? right? And if there's something else we need to do, then we add another key result. So again, that process of actually going through is what we call horizontal analysis, right? I'm looking to see, is there something missing? Do I need to do some other things in order to reach the objective? Combine decomposition, vertical analysis, and horizontal analysis, in my opinion, are the three analysis tools that are most valuable and most important in our society. I need to know, I'm always going to have big dreams. I need to break it down into smaller pieces. As a manager, there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to get done. There's a vision I have for whatever I'm managing. In order to delegate, I need to be able to describe the desired future state and then break it down. Here's the portion that I want this worker to do. Here's the result I want this person to do. If I don't do that, I can't delegate. And I can't work together. So I need to have that decomposition analysis technique. Vertical analysis, I need to be able to check to see, hey, are the activities that you're doing, will they actually reach the goal? Or are we misaligned? So I have to have that vertical analysis technique down. And then finally with this one, is there something else I'm missing? Are we doing everything necessary to reach the result? And lots of people forget the horizontal analysis piece of it. And people will do certain things and it's like, hey man, I did everything you told me, right? But we still don't have the result. Well, why are you mad at me? Right? And it's because we didn't do that horizontal analysis to figure out there's a piece missing. So I think that all three of these analysis techniques are super key to our society, super key for professionals, especially key for managers in order to direct their people. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that we are missing something because I think we're going to need a marketing or promotional aspect because once we get our team ready, we have to have some way. There's a gap in between team is ready and then in demand and being known. It's not going to just happen by itself. We're not going to just get the team ready and then we'll be in demand and be well known. We're going to have to market, advertise what we do in a way that will get us there.
You got it. So what we'll do is we'll wrap up this session.
Okay.
We end it with the horizontal analysis. We figured out that there was something missing through horizontal analysis. We haven't taken care of the marketing to make sure the word gets out. And so in the next episode, what we'll do is we'll take this example and we'll bring it to the next level. And the next level is saying, hey, do I actually change my existing KR? Or do I need to add an additional one? Like, how do you make that determination? Right? So again, we'll end it here and we'll pick up next time with looking at that decision. And this is another form of analysis. As a hint, it's capacity analysis you have to look at. Right? But thanks everybody for joining. We'll wrap up this session and we'll come back next time for another analysis techniques dealing with OKRs.